Welcome to Extracurricular. I am your co-host, Eddie Geller.
And I am your other co-host, Stephanie Vanos. I am also a member of the Orange County School Board, but I am here today unofficially. I ended that on a high note, and I don't know why.
What district do you represent?
District 6.
Where everything clicks, right? That's definitely...
It's what we're using for now.
Okay. I feel like I bring that up too much. Okay. Welcome to the podcast. If you have not listened before, this is going to be new to you, but I'm going to ask you to maybe consider subscribing, checking out our Instagram page, extracurricular_podcast, rating this podcast on your platform of preference. Steph, what do we rate the podcast?
5 stars only.
5 stars only. And if you do listen all the time, then you've heard me do this spiel. And hopefully this is part of what you enjoy about the podcast and you're not just fast forwarding it. But I wouldn't blame you for fast forwarding me today because it is International Women's Day and who needs to hear from a man? Am I right, Steph?
Wow, that was quite a transition.
It just came to me.
It is International Women's Day, and
you have 3 daughters. You're a woman yourself.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
I just
thank you for explaining that to me.
Okay. Mansplaining on International Women's Day. We're really off to a great start.
No, it is. It's a day just where I think about, of course, my daughters first and foremost, but I also think about all of the women in my life who have played such a big role into who I am. I mean, my mother, my grandmothers, and also my sister, who is an incredible woman, an incredible mother, and wife, and sister, and daughter, and honestly, teachers and mentors and friends. And as I started a career as a young lawyer, the, women in the law firm who, helped me to understand that you can be yourself and you don't have to fit any certain type of mold. And I just really appreciate that.
Oh, that was really beautiful. And now, I have to shout out my sister, my best friend, an incredible mother to my nephew, Teddy, who just cracks me up all the time. She's so smart. She's so funny and she's the best. And makes me remember my mother who passed away in 2005. So, thinking about Meryl Geller too. And of course, Nancy, my dad's partner, who is wonderful. And I love dearly and just a wonderful, welcoming, thoughtful human being. So happy International Women's Day to everyone. But speaking of International Women's Day, we had an incredible woman on the podcast. Tell us about who we had today.
We had Susan Windmiller. She is so involved locally in so many different ways. She is a political force. She's a wonderful woman. She has taught me a lot about just how to operate in this new political world that, for me at least was so new, and just a wonderful person all around.
I think when you think about the, organizers, who is an organizer? What is a community organizer? Who is a super organizer? That is someone like Susan, who, like you said, just a powerhouse and really involved in fundraising and getting donors to support the Orange County Democratic Party. And so I think she had a lot of experience both in her insights being a government worker in the past and transitioning some of that to the work she does here in Florida. So I think if you want to get involved, you're interested in how to be involved in local politics, this conversation with Susan is really insightful in that way. And she just has a great amount of experience that she talked about on the pod. And we were just lucky to have her. A real mensch.
Susan's amazing. Actually met her at League of Women Voters, just another great way to dip your toe in. And she just talked about how that experience, propelled her to do other things as well. So
I love it. I was going to make some sort of joke about the League of Men Voters, but A, let's not make that joke on International Women's Day, but also B, isn't that voting in general, just like thinking about voting starting with male landowners. Anyway, it was bad. I'm going to cut all of this out. So
I saw that going across your face as I was talking about it. So it was interesting to hear that.
Okay. Well, we'll talk about one man. And one man only on this podcast, on today's podcast. You made an endorsement in the governor's race. Tell us.
I did. I endorsed Jerry Demings. He is the current Orange County, Florida mayor. And he is running for governor. And I think he's someone who knows how to work with a lot of different types of people. I think he's someone who's been able to get things done. I think he's someone who understands where we're at and what we need. And so I was really happy to support him.
I love it. When are you going to get Jerry on the pod now that you've endorsed him?
Great question. Hanging out there.
Jerry, we're Mayor Demings. We're excited to have you on the pod. You're welcome anytime. Well, he's going to come on the pod. I'm manifesting that right now.
I love it.
Okay.
Can't wait.
Speaking of another race, perhaps not as important, but maybe so. You ran another race this weekend. Didn't you just run a race a couple weekends ago?
I mean, that's actually a long time in race world, but yes, I did run a race in February, and one of my elementary schools and middle schools, they had a joint race this past Saturday, which was amazing. Such a great community, and just seeing everybody out there was really fun. Was able to talk to a lot of different parents and teachers and principals, and really speaks to how strong schools really have strong communities around them. So it was fun. It was hot. And I'm out of shape, so it wasn't.
Oh my God,
great!
You are in incredible shape. You just ran a half marathon. You're in wonderful shape. Though I did see the picture of you, your face was very red.
It was hot.
I mean, look,
it was just 42 weeks ago, and now it was.
I'm not critiquing women's faces. This is an objective, as someone who sees your face a lot and lucky to do so. But your face was quite red in a couple of those pictures from after the race.
Heck yeah! If you're not going to go out there and try hard, what's the point?
Yeah, no, absolutely. The part about this race that when we were talking about off mic is that you were getting close to the end of this race, and there was a fourth grader in front of you that you made the conscious decision to not pass up because you didn't want to be one of those kind of people. I think that's beautiful and speaks to who you are as a human being and as a parent and a school board member. That being said, did you think hey, little kid, I could crush you if I wanted to?
I mean, it was funny, actually. I had been following, and I think it was his dad was running a little bit behind him for most of the race. And then I started to see his dad kind of maybe fall off a little bit. And so as I approached them, I came up to this. Yeah, no, he must have been about fourth grade, but man, he was working hard and he was not giving up. He was persisting. And I thought, I'm not running past him. So just kind of took a half step behind him, which I don't know, might have actually been more annoying. I'm not sure. And occasionally was like, you're doing a great job. Keep going. You're almost there. So no, had a great time, had a great run. And yeah, a lot of those young kids, man, they were killing it.
I love that. Also, if we ever do run together, I think we've done that maybe once, and you were so sweet. You went just much slower than you would normally run. That being said, if we do run again, please no words of affirmation as we're running. I would likely also be, put off by that. Just let me suffer in silence is what I have to say.
That's good to hear, because that is really important to know. I will say this though, I also had another run meeting this week, and I have to say the 6:30 a.m. meetings, sunrise meetings with a pair of running shoes on, running out a trail. I was actually in Tallahassee. That's the way to go. I feel like a lot happens in those meetings, and it's just good. It's just a good time. No phones, no distractions, no computers, no nothing, no people. I fully endorse not only Mayor Demings, but I endorse the sunrise running meetings.
Well, bless you for saying that. Different strokes for different folks. If we ever need to have a deep talk, let's please not do it at a 6:30 run meeting.
Well, let's talk about last night. You had a show. It was like the secret illegal comedy banned books show, which I love those.
Yeah, we have been doing a series of these improv shows where we base a lot of the improv off of parts of books that have been banned in the state of Florida. Equus, Handmaid's Tale, This Book is Gay, just some of the books that come to mind. It was another fun one. I feel like it really got into gear during the second half of the show. It was the vibes were not quite there in the first half. Do you think that's fair to say? All respect to my fellow cast members, some of whom might be listening, who were great, but the vibe was a little strange at the beginning.
I do like the end when you did the Cat in the Hat remake movie. It was, I mean, the rhymes people were coming up with on the spot and you creating the movie was pretty fantastic.
I was just like, I was not one of those people who was doing rhyming. I was just like, no, not in the mood to rhyme, but it was fun. I have never seen the Cat in the Hat movie. I think I read those books when I was young, but remember nothing of what happened. So there was a version of the Cat in the Hat movie. Let's say the Cat in the Hat meets Godzilla. So it was beautiful, and Dr. Seuss would be proud.
Very good, and I appreciated it.
Thank you. All right, without any further ado, let's get to our wonderful conversation with Susan Windmiller.
On the podcast today, we have my friend Susan Windmiller. The best word I can use to describe Susan is she is a force.
I was going to say powerhouse. That's so perfect.
Yes, it's perfect. So I'm so excited for this conversation. Thanks for being here, Susan.
Thank you for having me.
And why don't we start off? Why don't you just give us a little bit of background about, just a little bit of background about yourself. Tell us a little about yourself.
Oh, my goodness. We've lived in Orlando for about 6 years. But before that, way before that, Scott and I were married our senior year at the University of Illinois. I came home from a final exam. It was freezing cold. I was dressed like the abominable snowman. If any of you ever lived up north, you'll know what I mean. And I said to him, there's to be a better way to live than this. And so when we graduated in the spring, we packed up a U-Haul trailer with our bed, our wedding gifts, and our books. That was all we owned. And we drove to Miami, where my parents had already moved from Chicago. And we lived in their apartment for about 2 weeks till we found our own place. That was long enough with them. And I said, we'll find jobs. And if we don't, we can always go back. But we were, incredibly young. We had no mortgage. We had no kids. We had nothing. So it's like, let's give it a shot. So here we are. And then when we retired, our grandchildren were in Orlando because their parents went to UCF. So it was just pretty obvious we were moving to Orlando. Okay. And here we are.
Well, I can so relate to the Illinois experience. I, too, grew up there. It's something we have in common, having our years spent there. Just getting to that place where you realize it doesn't make you a better person to endure cold winters every year.
Nope, does not.
So here we are.
And I'm the person who grew up in Florida and then fell in love playing ice hockey, and I still have a love of the cold weather. But I think if I had to live up north for years and years, I'd hate it.
Well, when you grow up and you're living there, you don't know anything different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? But all of a sudden, my parents were living in Florida, and we went to visit them, and it was January, and there were palm trees, and we were wearing our cutoff shorts. That's what you wore then, and our sneakers. And Scott looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, we could do this.
Yeah.
Steph, should I be wearing more cutoff shorts?
Maybe. We'll see.
Let's talk about it later.
We won't talk about when that was.
So the first time that I met you, and so I've kind of known you only since you've been in Orlando, and I actually think that I met you right after you moved here. You may not remember it. I think we met initially at a League of Women Voters Hot Topics luncheon. This was in the old location. From what I recall, that the topic was Anna and Carlos were there, and they were talking about vouchers. And I think we sat next to each other, or we were in line next to each other, because I remember meeting someone who had just moved here from Miami. And so that's kind of how the first time that I met you.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't remember that incident, but yeah, that's how I got acclimated, because I had been involved with the league in Miami, so it was very natural to join the league in Orange County. And I did go to Hot Topics, which blew me away. We didn't have an event like that in Miami. And actually, I gave a little story. The first time I went to Hot Topics, I remember it was in August, and the topic was housing. And I walked out with this really attractive woman with beautiful red hair, and she was dressed in a suit and spiked heels and, clearly was working. And we walked out together, but in very league fashion. We introduced ourselves to each other and started chatting, and she gave me her card. So I went home, and of course, because I'm a leaguer, I looked up her website. She was a lawyer, and her website was so intentional in family law and how she practiced and what she believed. And a few months later, she declared to run for judge. This was Barbara Leach. And so I said to Scott, my husband, I'm going to volunteer for her campaign. He said, you don't even know her. I said, yes, I do. She's a member of the League of Women Voters. She has an unbelievable website. We need good women like this on the bench, and I'm going to be a volunteer. And I did. I went to all of her events. I did all this crazy stuff that you do to get elected, and I was there. And she's on the bench. And I think we're very lucky to have a woman like that serving our community.
Absolutely, and way to recognize that during Women's Month. So I love that.
Today's
That's
International Women's Day, so how good is that?
Should I even be on the podcast today?
I'm not sure, Eddie.
I do want to get to, when we talk about you as a powerhouse, I think about you, and I don't know you as well because I'm newer to Orlando, but I think of you as the center, at the center of Democratic politics here in Orange County, here in Orlando. And I'm curious, how did you end up there?
That's really interesting because I have really been nonpartisan most of my life. I was very active with the League of Women Voters in Miami, and I became active up here and was involved with Hot Topics and that whole production, which is, there's so much behind the scenes to make that happen every month, was unbelievable. Wonderful event, and I loved it. But then I got a phone call from Samuel Vilches Santiago, who was serving as the chair of the Democratic Party, and he had just been elected as chair, and he said, I want you to be my fundraising chair, my development chair. I said, I'm not a fundraiser. I'm a dot connector. He said, what do you mean? I said, I connect the dots for people. I put people together. I make things happen behind the scenes. I'm not a fundraiser. He said, yes, you are. I said, well, if you want me to be your fundraiser, I do have a couple of ideas.
That sounds right.
So then we had that conversation, and here I am. Yep.
And you and Sam, also previous podcast guest, I think maybe our first one.
Yeah, our first guest.
Our first guest. I love the partnership the two of you have.
Oh, it's very special. When we started meeting with donors at that time, I would say he's 27 and I'm 72, and we cover everything in between. But we just seem to really work very well together. I have enormous respect for him. He has such amazing insights into politics, but life and people and this community and what is possible and his vision. But he also has an old soul. For someone so young, he has immense maturity and understanding of things that you wouldn't expect of a 27-year-old. So, and he had respect for me and my experience and never treated me as an old lady. He treated me as someone with knowledge and experience that together we could serve each other in our community. And so that was really very special.
Well, I love that description because I think, we've talked on this podcast actually about, the gerontocracy, right? Like do we need to have younger people run for office, and I've, how should I say this? I think sometimes I think that we don't treat older people well, and not to say that you're an older person, but what I'm trying to say is sometimes I think, people kind of reach maybe the end of their career and they're I've heard some people say they feel invisible, they have all of this experience and all of this knowledge and they've seen so much and I feel like sometimes we don't give them the place that they need. I don't know. That was a terribly worded question, but how would you feel about that?
I think you're absolutely on target. It's really interesting where I live. They had an event last week for International Women's Day, and the speaker is 83 years old. She's an amazing woman doing all sorts of things at 83. And the first thing she said to the audience, which was predominantly older women, retired, was, what are you going to do with the rest of your life now that you've accomplished most of the things that you've been expected to do? Whatever that was. For me, it was, have a career, get married, have a family, and all of that. So I thought, wow, what an amazing question. And one of the things she said is exactly what you talked about, Stephanie, that people don't know what our experiences are. And she said, we need to write stories and give them to our children so that one day when we're gone, they're going to know this about us, because no one sits down and says to their grandmother. So tell me, Grandma, what did you do? You know, but if there's things that you're proud of or things that happened to you or little footnotes, they're not going to know it. How are they going to know? So I thought that was really cool. And you could do them in any form you're comfortable with, right? You could do a video or write it down or whatever. So I thought, wow, that was very cool. But I have had that experience. I think one of the places that it's absolutely the worst is when women go to doctors, and especially male doctors, and we tell them how we feel, and they don't hear us. And I have slowly changed over the years so that almost all my doctors are female because they listen.
Yep.
But you're right. I think that we have experiences. I love it in politics that we have young people stepping up. I think that's really important. They're the next generation. And as the baby boomers pass on, they're the ones that will be inheriting this world that we're leaving behind. And I think it's wonderful that they have that sense of responsibility, that they are not only going to be involved, but they're going to run for office and provide that service to their communities, to us, and champion our values. We need that. But there also needs to be an opportunity for them to include in their kitchen cabinets, which I like to call their inner circle, their advisors, whoever they rely on, to include some people with experience. Because that's what makes life rich, is to have all stripes involved. And older people have their life experiences to draw on that might be insightful to them.
Absolutely.
100%. The line I want to hopefully tactfully negotiate is the difference between, I think, and not that you were saying anything different, but the difference between holding on to power as folks who've been in office maybe for decades versus, I think, respecting voices and experiences of those who've been around for longer. And I think those are two slightly different things and we're seeing this play out right now, this generational battle in Democratic primaries of young challengers. And I do think it is really important. And again, neither of you said anything otherwise, but it always does strike me when I hear this statistic that if we look at Bill Clinton, George Bush, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, their birth years, 46, 46, 46, and 42. So there has been this hold of a certain generation of folks in power. And I think that's at least the gap that I wanted to articulate while we're having this discussion.
No, I think that's a really important point. But I think what I'm trying, I think what is important though is it's not just you're in power or you're out of power. Like I wish we had a better transition from, maybe as you move from power, you don't just go to, retire on an island and not talk to anyone else, that you stay, that if you choose to, that you stay and share some of that experience.
I would like to think that I mentor people.
Yes.
And so I can share with them, here's something you might not have thought about, might want to consider this. Here's another perspective. Yep. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but that's okay. That's why there's chocolate and vanilla.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. And I think Sam has been a great partner to you. And I know you have been a great mentor to me. I have gone to you. We've had lunches. We've had coffees. Okay, let's talk about this. What do you think? What do you think is the best route? What would you do? And I really appreciate that.
Well, part of that, I think, for me has been my experience in government and the reputation I established for myself, especially when I worked for about 16 years at the Miami-Dade Police Department, which at that time had an appointed director. Now they have an elected sheriff, so things have evolved. But at that time, I handled legislative affairs for the police department, and the director would often say, well, what does this proposed legislation mean? And how is it going to affect our officers? How is it going to affect our agency? How is it going to affect public safety in our community? What does this mean? And so I would, do the pros and cons, and I would give him a little sheet, and he would say, it was always a he. After I left, there was a she. There's a sheriff elected now as a woman first. He would say, well, what do you recommend? And I say, well, I recommend da-da-da-da-da. And he would say, I don't like that. I said, well, that's why director is after your name. but they knew that I was straight with them. I would give them my best assessment based on my homework, based on my understanding of our agency, our community, the legislation, what was going on. And I was, not an ass kisser.
Never have been, never will be.
So, people used to joke all the time, oh, here comes Windmiller down the hall. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, we can hear you squeak. But I took that as a compliment. I like that. So, and so when you would ask me things, you knew that you could ask me a question and know that I wasn't playing to you for a particular reason, that I was telling you how I saw things from my perspective. And I think that was important to whoever I spoke with, but that's what connected us.
Yeah.
Because I was pretty direct about the educational situation and how I see it as a taxpayer and as a grandparent of granddaughters, 4 granddaughters, all living in Central Florida, who've all gone through public schools. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and 2 of them one's in Seminole and one's in Orange right now.
When you think about your background in government and analyzing legislation, et cetera, all that, how do you think about that experience as it relates to the kind of work and advocacy and fundraising that you do now?
Well, a couple of things. I learned very early on how to organize things. I have a really wonderful friend, Sami Haiman Marrero, who likes to use a 21st century term to re-engineer things. I didn't have that term at the time, but it was, what's the end goal? What do you want? Where do you want to go? And how are we going to get there? And what's it going to take? What kind of people? What kind of resources? Or what kind of logistics? Just everything that was needed, and we would work backwards, and then that was your plan. So I was a very organized person, and I could do that pretty well. But also, I think at the end of the day, everything is about relationships. And so how do you talk to people? And more than how do you talk to them, do you listen to them? And do you hear what they have to say? Really hear what they have to say and think about that and ponder it and incorporate that into whatever you're going to do. And I think, so it's a combination that I have. And then also it's just my skill, my secret sauce, I guess, is that I understand very well the vision or the mission. And I also understand what it's going to take to get there. So, I understand the big thinking, but I understand the micro, and that's very helpful.
And what an important role to have, because not everybody has that. A lot of people have the big ideas and they have no idea how to get there. And then a lot of people get trapped in the rabbit holes and the minutia and cannot keep the big picture in mind. So truly a gift of what you bring. And I think that's why you have been so incredibly successful. One question I did want to ask, you talked about relationships. And, I know as someone who has spent time in the nonprofit and in sort of advocacy area, that sometimes different groups are, don't always get along. Sometimes they're vying for perceived power. But one thing that you told me is that you never worked alone and that you would always try to find groups that had similar views, similar values, and try to work together to accomplish things. And you've been really successful at making that happen. So how do you do that? How do you do that?
Well, it started with the League of Women Voters when I was president. Well, even before I was president, I was involved in a really amazing project. Not to talk politics, but that's my life.
Okay.
We're happy to talk about
when
it.
Obama came, I was involved in the League and I was on the board, and my dear friend Maribel Belbin was president. And Obamacare was passed, and she said, we have a responsibility to this Miami-Dade community to explain to them what this means and what it's all about so that they know what this opportunity means for them and their families. I said, okay, so how are we going to do this? Okay, we're not healthcare experts, but we know how to educate the public. That's what the League of Women Voters does, right? We educate voters when there's an issue and be prepared so that they can make an informed decision at the ballot box. So what are the components of this? Okay, first of all, we need people who are knowledgeable and respected people in healthcare. Well, that was the Health Council of South Florida. They were actually recognized or appointed, I don't know what the term was, as navigators. And that was the person that was actually officially appointed to explain to people in the community what Obamacare meant and what it was all about. So we said, okay, we want to work with you. And then we knew we needed places where people actually go, the people who would be affected, not people who already have health insurance from their employers, but other people. Where can we go, and where would it be free? Well, that's a library. So working in government, I knew agencies. And I called the library director with Maribel and said, we want to partner with you. Our vision is to include the health council. They'll talk about the health care. The library will give us the locations. Oh, and by the way, you have a marketing program for your patrons. So would you please market our sessions? Well, we conducted 55 sessions, north to south, east to west in Miami-Dade County. And at the end, we were the county with the largest number of enrollees. Of course, we had the largest population, too, in Obamacare. And I would like to think it was partly because of our program. And so it was a partnership. And that was like a light bulb went off in my head. It was like, the league could never have done this alone. Mm-hmm. We did this because we knew how to reach voters, and the Health Council knew how to talk about health care insurance, and the library knew how to market a program and make a room available to us that was user-friendly. So it was like, wow. Mm-hmm. So then when I became president, for whatever reason, Miami-Dade's league was rather small by comparison to Orange County. We had about 200 members. Actually, when I started, it was 100. By the time we finished, we doubled to 200. I thought, how am I going to get all of these things done? I have this huge vision of what do I want to accomplish. I need a kitchen cabinet. I need to bring together those organizations, have to be nonpartisan, but we could work together. So I instantly went to the public schools and worked with Miami-Dade Public Schools. I worked with the Miami-Dade College. I worked with YWCA. I worked with the Women's Fund. I worked with a wonderful environmental organization headed by women, started by a woman, to get a little theme here, called the Clio Institute. Caroline Lewis, amazing woman. And so whenever we did something, if ever there was an issue, and we can talk about some of the big ones, I would call my kitchen cabinet together. So if I had a press conference, I was surrounded by all of these amazing organizations. It wasn't just the League of Women Voters. Mm-hmm. No, it was all of these other sectors in our community who also had boards, who also had members, who also had subscribers. And so whatever we did was like, the little rock in the water, and we just sent ripples out all over Miami-Dade County. And that's how we really were so effective with everything that we did. And I would like to think that that's continued. But I know in my life, in the work that I don't do anything alone. It's always about the team. And everybody is valued and respected and has a role to play. And we need them. That's what makes it so terrific.
That's lovely. And Steph, it actually makes me think of, I think, some of the work that you do and that we talk about, which is when OCPS is working with other organizations and bringing other folks in to, work on programs. I don't know, can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, it's exactly what Susan said. And I would say from a public education standpoint, we do not have the funding to do all of the things we need to do. There's exactly what you said. There's just no way. We don't have the resources we need. And I think at the same time, we recognize that in order for students to be able to thrive and to learn and to thrive, they actually need even more. So it is, do you have medical care? Do you have dental care? Do you, have your eyes been tested? Do you have glasses? Things that, I know as a school district, we cannot provide, but when we partner with, local healthcare providers, we partner with local optometrists and eye doctors, when we partner with local dental groups that, can provide these services, this is just one example, that then we can kind of get to where we need to be. We could never do that on our own. And I think we continue to realize that. And I think we continue to realize that if the OCPS does want to have good, strong partnerships, we need to make sure that it's easy for people to partner with us and that they feel valued.
I love that. Have you thought about partnering with improv comedians? Do you see a use case there? We should talk.
Actually, I do. I feel like joking aside, communication skills are extremely important. And I think that as kids are on screens and they don't have that face-to-face interaction, all of those skills are extremely important.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because they do so much of their friend communication by texting. They don't talk. They might even be in the same room and they're texting. So my granddaughter shared an experience with one of her friends, and, it was a very long text. And I learned something from the police department. A woman said to me once, not every email requires a response. Brilliant. Wow. It was like brilliant, because I think, you're in the public and you get an email, you have to respond. No, there's no rule that says you have to respond to everything. So I just said to her, if you put it out there, it's going to be there. It's not going to go away. Even if you delete it from your phone, it's still out there. So think about that. You may not want to answer that.
Yeah, that's good advice. Good advice.
So I don't know. I mean, relationships come in all shapes and forms these days. But I think one of the things too that's amazing about OCPS is Leadership Orange. And I participated in that last year, and every month I went, it was like, boom! It was like, I didn't know that about OCPS. I didn't know that about OCPS. They do that? What? It was eye-opening.
And can you talk just a little bit about what that is for folks who don't know?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No
There's a leadership program.
You're not allowed to apologize during this month.
So it's I had just heard about it from other people who attended, and it sounded really interesting to me, and very selfishly, because I have grandchildren in public schools, I thought, I need to learn more about the public school system here. Their parents are all busy working. They're probably not going to do this, but I can do this. I'm retired. So I found out that my school board member would nominate you, and at that time it was Angie Gallo, and I sent her an email saying I really would like to do this, and I had to explain why, and I think there was an application process. Yep. And I got a notice later on saying that I had been approved to attend, and I think the first one was in September, and it was at this really cool elementary school, Windy Ridge, and a wonderful principal, and it was just fabulous. And every month, we met from September to May or April, and every month was a different focus about the school system. And wonderful faculty, wonderful professionals, wonderful staff. And I just can't say enough about it, or our school system, or the dedication of our school board members working with our administration. I mean, Maria Vasquez is a gem, and we're lucky to have her team. And I think that we've got a lot of things going on in public education that needs people's attention.
Absolutely. I'm going to take a point of personal podcast privilege. Steph, close your ears. I'd love to hear your take on Stephanie's first year plus as a school board member, and what makes her special and so fabulous.
Oh my God.
I feel like you're setting up that answer right there. That's some bias there.
Everything. Are you kidding? I mean, everything. First of all, she's all over the community. So she really knows what's going on in her district. What are their worries? What are their concerns? She talks to teachers. She talks to principals. She even talks to kids. I see what she's doing. I see from what she reports and what's on her social media. So I think first and foremost, that's amazing. So I don't even know how she packs it into a day and evening. And then school board meetings, I will say I'm not, one that attends school board meetings with any regularity, if at all, but she does her homework. You cannot go into those meetings with those agendas that are packed, and sometimes they're packed with some really highly sensitive missives in there. Yeah. And if you haven't done your homework and prepare yourself, you're gonna be completely ineffective as a school board member. And why would we want that person on the board? So there you go.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you for indulging that.
Well, and I think, thank you for saying that. But, I want to take it back to something you said before, which was, in your past life and your past career that, government and, OCPS as a public school can do good things. It can do good things for people. And, representatives of those institutions can and should be out in the community asking what people want to see, how they can help them, what services they can provide, what resources are needed. And I really think we need to be doing that. And I think that's a really important part of the job. And I know that's something you talked about from your experience in Miami.
When I first went to work for Miami-Dade County, and you have to understand at that time, government was a really great place for young women to start their careers. It was wonderful. And I worked for an amazing woman, I think she's still working, Charlotte Gologly, who hired me as her assistant. I worked for the drug and alcohol program, okay? I did not even know that government services included services for people with addiction problems with drugs and alcohol. And it was unbelievable. And we served all kinds of people all over Miami-Dade County. And it was really eye-opening to me that government, when it works well, which it did then. We had an amazing county manager who should rest in peace, Merritt Steerheim, amazing, but was very serious about government delivering for the people and using tax dollars responsibly and being transparent. We didn't use those words then, transparent and accountable, but that's what we were. Mm-hmm. And one of my first positions was involved in defunding programs that didn't deliver on their contract requirements. Pretty heady stuff. But government was looked upon at that time in the 70s and 80s as something until Ronald Reagan said, be afraid of when the government comes, right? But until then, it was always viewed as wonderful and good and helping and advancing the community so everyone would have an opportunity, so that everyone could have a chance at a bite at the apple, whatever that apple is.
That's beautifully said, and actually makes me, this is almost too much of a, I think, synthesis to put into just a couple sentences, but it makes me think a lot of the discussions Steph and I have had about charter schools and taxpayer-funded vouchers, and we talk about government doing good work and good work for the people, and I think about public schools, which is an incredible creation and do an amazing job, but when Republicans and some Democrats as well say we can actually degrade the public schools and you could go elsewhere and get a better education, this sort of this Reagan mantra, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help, one of the most, as he phrased it, like the most dangerous words, I forget exactly. Like, I just think, like, when we attack these government entities, we're creating this place for profit and places to make money. And I just think about that dichotomy and that contrast. Sorry, that was a little inarticulate, but it made me think about your reverence for government work.
Okay, I don't know if I can say this, but it goes back to the late 90s when Jeb Bush was governor, and that was his plan. Yeah. And that plan has played out. Yeah. And he was very clear about that. And eventually, if you defund enough from public schools, oh my God, they're doing a terrible job. We'll just have to get rid of our public schools. In essence, that was the plan.
Much more succinct and well put than I said.
Although I would say that public schools continue to do the best with the least, right? Like they're doing such great things with so little, and all of the attempts to defund and destroy. Of course, our students have been impacted, right? Like we should be paying our teachers more. There's so many things that we should be doing.
What are we, 49th in the country?
Yes,
for
exactly.
teacher salary?
Yeah, 50th or 49th.
And 50th or 49th for student funding?
Per pupil funding, exactly,
right.
Exactly. So there's
Nothing
so much more we
of.
can do. So much more we can do.
Yes.
But I'm glad you had a great experience at Leadership Orange. I also was a graduate of Leadership Orange, and had just learned a lot as well. So
yeah, I'm a big cheerleader.
Yeah. Well, one other thing I wanted to ask about was, so you're here very active in the local political party, the Democratic Party. And, one thing I'll say that I've really noticed about you is that kind of when you came on the scene, you were able to bring in so many new people and into the fold. And part of it was just they were interested in learning more, and they understood that maybe there was a place for them, and you really expanded it and opened it. And I think that was, that will be felt forever here. You've helped us to grow so much. And so, I was just kind of wondering, how did you do that? And especially someone who wasn't from here, like you didn't have years and years of relationships with people here, but somehow you gained their trust and gained their interest and gained, in many cases, their money. How do you do that?
God, that is so flattering. That's a hard place to start, Stephanie. When you think about it, Samuel and I had only 3 things when we met with donors. We had a plan, a promise, and a reputations. That is all we had when we met with people.
And can you remind us, what year was this?
2024.
Okay, so very recently.
Oh, yeah. We got together in January. We put together an electoral plan that laid out exactly what we wanted to accomplish and what the roadmap would be to get there, what we would have to do, how many doors we were, it was very specific, how many doors we would knock, emails, events, all of the nitty gritty, everything. And, but nobody knew us and nobody knew if we could deliver. So that's the plan and the promise. Mm-hmm. And as much as we would Google donors to see who we're meeting with, I'm sure they Googled us, right? So whatever they found, so we would meet, and a lot of times there was no ask. We would just have a conversation about, we would tell them we were meeting with them because we wanted them to know what we were doing, that we were going to be changing the way the Democratic Party was operating. And we already had a proof of concept being successful, and that was with the special election that resulted in Tom Keene's win for the state House seat. That was scheduled in January of 24. It was crazy, right after the holidays. But we had done something that they had never done before and brought all sorts of different groups and all different kinds of people together to canvass for him and do all the other things that volunteers do. And it worked. It worked. And so moving forward, we could draw that on that one example and say, what's important to you? Tell us a little bit about what you want. What is your vision? What do you see? And really listen to people. And we'd say, okay, here's our vision. Let's see, where do we match? Where can we align with one another and help one another? Because a lot of people have lived here for years that we met with. A lot of people were rarely new. We met with all different kinds of people. But we always asked them, what's important to you? And meant it. And I think that accounted for something. And also, people who know me know this is part of my spiel. They would always ask, well, is there money coming in from national? No, there's not money coming in from national. Well, what about from the state? Well, we got a small amount, but that's probably all we're going to get. And I'd say, we're the cavalry. We are the cavalry. We are going to save this community. And who is we? I said, well, we are very fortunate that we have amazing people like Stephanie Vanos who run for office and want to serve us and champion our values and fight for us and our families and our children. We were incredibly grateful. Carlos Guillermo-Smith, Ana Escamani, Rita Harris, Tom Keene. I can't even think Johanna Lopez, my rock star. I love her. A lot of wonderful candidates. Mayor Demings. So that's great. And then we have amazing volunteers, people who work, people who are retired, people who give time and squeeze extra time into their days and weekends and volunteer in all sorts of ways, from sign waving to door knocking to delivering yard signs, all the things that volunteers can do to help a candidate get elected. And then we have wonderful donors, and the donors give to candidates. But I said, and you should, if you have the resources, you should give to candidates. And everybody has to do one of those 3 things to the very best of their ability, not a little bit. You have to do it 110%. That we have to do that.
Let me ask this real quick. We've talked a bit about spending money in campaigns. Steph and I obviously both ran for office, and we had Chris Mitchell, a friend of ours, talk about what candidates spend money on. When someone's giving money to a party, what are they giving money to? How is the party spending that?
Oh, you read my mind. Okay, so far, up until the time mostly that Samuel and I had met with these individuals, prospective donors, they were used to giving money to candidates. They were very comfortable giving money to candidates. They had no experience giving money to a party, let alone the local party. And so we said, look, the candidates need your money, definitely. If you have the capacity to give to them and you believe in that candidate, by all means, you should support them to the maximum amount that their campaign law allows. And if they have a PAC, give to the PAC too. But we are the ones that turn out the vote. That is not a candidate's job. Their job is to meet with the constituents in their district and listen to what they're concerned about and try to incorporate those concerns into their campaign and reach as many people in their district as possible to get them to vote for them. But we are about turning out Democrats, okay? Are the Democrats voting? Are the Democrats ready to vote? I mean, it's taken a little bit from the League of Women Voters, but are you voter ready?
Yeah.
Do you have your registration? Is your signature current? Is your address current? Do you have a vote by mail request? We know all of the tactics that have been put in place by the opposition over the last 10 years at least to suppress the vote. So you cannot assume that whatever you have on file with the supervisor of elections is okay. It's not okay. You have to re-register after every election. So all of that information, we have to get out to them all the time in a variety of different ways, where the voters are at. Sometimes it's knocking on doors. Sometimes it's an email. Sometimes it's in a door hanger. Sometimes it's in a phone call. We do a lot of phone banking. Whatever works, however you get your information. And of course, it's never once. We know as teachers, you have to say it at least 3 times, right? So that means you're spending more money because you're reaching out and touching voters more frequently in many different ways. And all those ways take money. People think text messages are free. They are not free. And if your text message includes a link to register to vote or to find some information, that's an extra cost. The door printing for door hangers costs. Platforms for phone banking costs. So all of the mechanisms to reach voters require resources. And so we are grateful for all of our dedicated and generous donors who have responded, and they have.
And so what are some of the tools that got you the results that you were looking for?
Okay, so in 24, we won 27 of 35 races, and we flipped 4 seats red to blue, which is unbelievable. And in 25, an off year, we won 12 of 12 races. So,
woohoo.
Okay.
Wow.
So we believe, especially in 24, when we had really record turnout, that one of the primary tools was our voter guide. And that voter guide was possible because of our Democracy Society members. We created a special group as part of the Democratic Party in Orange County called the Democracy Society, where people who have the capacity to give more have an opportunity to do so. And their investment in us allowed for us to publish and distribute more than 700,000 voter guides, about 400,000 in hard copy when vote-by-mail ballots dropped, and about 300,000 in text messages when early voting began. And then when early voting started, we continued to print hard copies and distribute them at all the polling places where our volunteers were working. And we'd say, do you need a voter guide? And remember, most people knew who was on the top of the ballot, but they don't know the down ballot races like our fabulous school board member or judges. People, had no idea. And we had the county charter amendments. We had the state of Florida amendments. We had everything on that ballot. So it was an amazing tool. And we believe there is a direct through line for that voter guide through to the results that we got at the ballot box.
That's amazing. Fantastic work. And thank you for all the effort that you all have put in to make that happen. It's incredible.
We're very excited.
And it really does. You know, as someone who is, you know, at the bottom of the ballot, probably as a V, probably the very last person on the ballot, it is important because there's just less money in lower ballot races. They just those candidates just can't get out in the same way that, you know, maybe top of the ballot can. And so it really is critical to have voter guides just so people understand who's even there.
And for me, it was really important, and I was so glad that we included all of the races, because having a 33-year career in county government, I really understood how local government matters, how our school board members matter because of my experience with the league and working with the school board. Those are very critical decisions, and I used to do this workshop at Miami-Dade College with students in the social studies department called Decoding the Ballot when it was election time. You know, the kids would say, oh, I know who's running for president. That's all that matters. I said, really? Close your laptops.
First step.
Yeah, they're all sitting there on their laptops. Close your laptops. So tell me what's important to you. And just to be real quick. So most of them came down to safe drinking water. We're really worried about that. Transportation, because they couldn't get to the college and their part-time jobs and home within a reasonable period of time. And I'm talking under 2 hours each trip, okay? And an affordable place to stay. Many of them were still living at home with either their parents or their grandparents. So I said, okay, those are really great issues. Who makes the decisions that affect those things? The president. No, okay, let's start this again. The governor. No. I said, okay, forget it. I'm going to tell you. Your county commissioner makes the decision. Who's that? They were clueless. So then we would have a whole conversation about county government and county commissioners, and we would go online and put their address in and who was their commissioner, and all of that ensued. But the point is, they didn't understand. They didn't know. And we know that that is a very important position. Same with public policy for our public education. Public schools is the one place where children can go, any child from any background, whatever their status, to reach their full potential. That's what public schools are supposed to do. And so without the right people like Stephanie on our school board, those opportunities are diminished.
Yeah.
So well said. I feel like we need you to do a community course here and let people know exactly what's on the ballot and why it matters, why local elections matter, and
Let's do it.
I love it.
Love
See,
it.
and that's what I mean. That's her energy. Let's do it.
Let's do it. I want to talk a little bit about this moment right now, 2026. You know, as we talked about, you're on the pulse of local politics here in Orange County. Tell us about what you're hearing from donors, activists right now in 2026 in Florida, because Florida always tough, especially post-COVID, but there is a little bit of maybe spring in our step in 2026, but I'm curious, what are you feeling?
I think people are exhausted.
Oh, okay.
They're exhausted. They're angry. They're frustrated. They're scared. It depends on where you are in the community and what your comfort level is with resources. But I think at the end of the day, we're all worried about the future of our community, our state, our country. And so everybody is a little bit more anxious, some more ready to jump in, others ready to jump out. And so when they say that, I want to listen.
Yeah.
And see how I can help them come back and offer different ways. Sometimes it's not always financially. It might be connecting with a candidate who will inspire them. And then we can come back to them financially later on. Whatever. We want everybody to be involved and to be active. For instance, this morning, the Democratic Party had this huge opportunity to bring all of our precinct captains together to have a training on organizing within their precincts, with voters in their precinct, Democratic voters in their precincts. And what a great opportunity. I mean, that's the grassroots level. That's where it happens. So, yeah.
And one thing I appreciate you is you always say there's something that everyone can do, right? And maybe you're someone who doesn't have time, but you do have money. Maybe you're someone who has doesn't have money, but you could knock a door. Maybe you can make a phone call. Maybe talk a little bit about those ways for people who are out there who are thinking, you know what, I really want to do something. I just don't know where to get in.
Well, let's start with the very basic. Okay, so everybody has a group of friends. Who do you carpool with? Who do you play mahjong with? Who do you golf with? Play tennis with? Play pickleball? Who are your buddies? Make a list. I'm sure there's going to be at least 10 people on that list. So call those 10 people. Are you registered? Ask them all the questions. Is your address current? Is your signature current? Yada, yada. Do you have a vote by mail ballot request? That is so easy to do. Doesn't cost you anything but time, maybe half an hour. Call those 10 people and stay on them. When it's election time, did you vote? Let's make a plan to vote. Let's go vote together. So that is like the easiest, low-cost investment to do. And everybody has at least 10 friends, 10 family members that they can stay on top of to be engaged and involved. If you want to do more than that, well, then call me, 305-984-6089, or send me a text or send me an email. I'm at development@orangefldemocrats.com, and we'll connect. But there's lots of things that you can do. I'll put you in touch with your precinct captain if that so connects with you to do things at the grassroots level in your neighborhood. If you want to be involved in other activities, we'll get you connected.
I love it. Good practical advice.
Well, one other thing we have here is specifically candidates, because I've seen you, Susan, talk to a friend of mine who is considering running for office, and you were just, you're making, people aren't able to see you making a face, but you so beautifully articulated he's beginning to be interested in politics and thinking about running, and you so beautifully articulated the path that he could take and how it was important to organize and to point his passions in this direction. So I was wondering if you could, give some advice for folks who are listening and think about, maybe one day I want to run for office. Like what kind of advice do you give to people who come to you like that?
Oh my goodness. I'm not sure what I said to your friend.
It was beautiful.
Okay. So let me channel what that was. Okay. So what's your why? The most important thing is be your authentic self. And I know that word sounds so cliche today, but who are you? And why do you want to do this? Because you are going to be out there, putting yourself out there in the public forum, and you want to be crystal clear, first of all, to yourself about why are you doing this? Why does this matter? And then what is your message? What do you want to tell people? And then how are you going to talk to people so you can listen to them and find out, what they want? And, at the end of the day, elections are about numbers. So what do the numbers tell you? What is the potential path to victory, to winning? Where are the voters in your district for where you're going to be running? And what kind of conversations you're going to have to get those voters to talk to you, for you to listen to them about what's important to them, if you can connect with them in a way to inspire them to support you. I think those are the things you have to do.
Well said. Steph, anything else?
No, I'll just say you were such a great encourager to me when I ran too. And had the great fortune and also awful comparison of running with some amazing candidates in my district at literally every level. And that can make one feel, a little insecure maybe, but you always said to me that, no, it's so great that you act differently, or you speak differently, or you have a different angle than them, because you're you. And that's what matters. And so that was just really good encouragement.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to be yourself. And you know what? When you're not, the voters see it.
100%.
Yep.
Well, Susan, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for giving us your wisdom, and thank you for all the work you put in on behalf of Orange County Democrats. We're so grateful.
I am so honored. It's a privilege to be here with both of you, and it's really an honor to serve this community, more than you can possibly imagine.
It's beautiful.
Can't thank you enough.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
Bye-bye.